Hello, this is Amanda Malave with BUS312 Principles of Marketing. Today we're going to go over Chapter 10, which is all about pricing and understanding and capturing customer value. So let's just review the expanded model of the entire marketing process. So in Chapters 8 and 9, we actually went through constructing the first parts of an integrated marketing program. And what we did is we focused on understanding products and services and how to build strong brands. And then we actually went through the entire process of how major corporations really take a systematic approach to developing products and services that do bring value, and also to get to be the first one to develop those products and services so that you're gaining competitive advantage. So today we're going to go through the next step after you create a product, which is really identifying pricing. Pricing is super critical because customers will perceive value from a specific product based off of pricing alone at times. So it's very important, just like labeling and packaging and even the benefits of a product are. So again, all of this is to engage customers to build profitable relationships so that we capture and create value for our customers. And in return, they will purchase things and we capture value from them to create profits and customer equity. So Chapter 10's got three main core objectives. One is really understanding what price is. Number two is identifying the major pricing strategies, and there's several of them that we'll go through today. And then lastly, identifying important external and internal factors that a marketing leader would have to really understand before they make pricing decisions. So let's answer the first question. What is a price? Well, price is the amount of money that you'll charge for a product or services, and it's also the sum of all the values that a customer exchanges for a benefit of having or using a product. So pricing can include warranty or not include warranty, or it can be bundled or not bundled from a packaging standpoint. So price and product really go hand in hand. So objective number two, which is the majority of this chapter, is really understanding what options do you have from a pricing strategy perspective, and how do customers value those pricing strategies from their perceptual standpoint. What do they think? And how does cost play into pricing? And then what are competitor strategies? How do we deal with that in setting pricing as well? So today's example is going to be Kimuchi Spam Musubi. They're a really great musubi cafe, and they have very, very unique musubis. So these are pretty much everywhere in Waikiki, even in all over the islands. However, how does one customer decide to go to one place versus the other? And what pricing does the musubi cafe put on their products? So let's take a look at that. So here's their menu. I'm not going to go through the entire menu, but they have musubis all the way from $1.88 to our Kimuchi Spam Musubi, which is $2.38. So how do they get from $1.88 to $2.38? And by the way, Musubi Cafe is just an incredible musubi place with 2,503 reviews on Yelp and 4 3/4 stars. So they provide exceptional product. So let's take a look at some of their details. So let's just assume that it takes them about $1 to make the Kimuchi Spam Musubi. They price it at $2.38, and their target markets are both the Asian tourist as well as the Kama'aina. So let's take a deeper dive in how they potentially set the pricing. There's several ways to do this, and you'll need to really understand this specific matrix here because it has a lot of the answers for some of the exams and quizzes. So again, our target markets are Kama'aina and Asian tourists. Our costs are about $1. So there's product cost and consumers' perception of value that are hand in hand and at opposites level of a pricing strategy. So product cost will set the floor, and the floor is the lowest level that a price can be set so that there is no profit. So they're not losing profit, but they're not making any profit. So if the product cost $1 to make, then it would be the price floor would be at $1. So from that perspective, we also know that there's a ceiling. The ceiling is that no one's going to buy any Masubi at all, no matter who it is, unless it's got something really, really special in it, if we charge it above $5. So that would be a ceiling where the demand just is nothing if you price it at that level. So somewhere between the $1 and $5 is a price that we have to have. And one of the things that we need to make sure that we understand is where are our competitors? What are their strategies? And the nature of the market. So let's take a look at one of our biggest competitors, which is 7-Eleven. 7-Elevens are everywhere, and their deluxe spam masubi is $1.75. So what pricing should we put into place? Well, they decided on a $2.38 price point. And the reason being is because of the quality of the product and the different items that they have in their specific product, and the fact that their product is a little bit bigger. So again, they set their pricing between not having any profits and then putting it too high that nobody would want it, but higher than their competitors because of the perception and the in actuality the quality that their products have, that many, as a matter of fact, 2,308 people loved it so much that they've actually commented it on Yelp. So here's another slide that you'll need to make sure that you understand for the exam, which is customer value-based pricing. Value-based pricing uses the buyer's perception rather than the seller's cost to put the price into play. And some of these value-based pricings could be for things that people just really, really find value in. So for example, innovators would find value in the first Apple iPhone versions that come out every year. Pharmaceuticals really focus on value-based pricing because people that have diabetes are going to need the medication, and so they're going to be placing the value on that specific product. There's also cost-based pricing, which is product driven. The price is set to match the perceived value. So let's take a little deeper dive into what all this means. So this is a really great slide that helps you understand this. So looking at cost-based pricing, the first step is always you design a good product first. The product determines the cost, and then the price is set based off of the cost of that product. So for example, with the spam masubi, we know that the cost is $1 and the product would therefore set the price. So we would price it anywhere between $1 and whatever amount of money we want to make. So it has nothing to do with what the customer perceives our product compared to the 7-Eleven product, for example, or even what the customer perceives our quality to be. So the product has to convince the buyer of its own value. So value-based pricing is you assess what the customer needs first. So, the Masubi company decided, there's tons of Masubis everywhere, but we're going to make unique Masubis. They're going to be bigger, they're going to be better tasting, they're going to be unique. So let's start with a whole slew of array of products. So we assess that our customers really love Masubis, both the people that live here and our tourists. And then based off of that, we'll set a price to match the customer's perception of our quality and our product. And then we'll determine the cost that we can incur. So we know that people will buy $2.50 of Masubi. So in order for us to make a profit, we can't go over $1 worth of costs because we want to make at least $1.50 or $1.38 on our product. So from that standpoint, we designed the product to deliver the value to our target market versus the product and then setting the price so that we convince a buyer to purchase our product. So let's go through each one in detail. We're going to go through several customer value-based pricing strategies, and then we'll go through the cost-based pricing strategies. So the first one is good value pricing. This is just making sure that you have the right combination of quality and goods and services at a fair price. A great example for this is Target. Target made a real big name for themselves when they changed the way that they looked, meaning that their products look like they have higher quality than they used to in the past, and they charge a fair price. They're not going to charge exuberant prices. They charge prices that people go, oh, yeah, that seems okay for the convenience or the perception of quality versus, for example, potentially going to a Walmart. So, from that standpoint, Target really came into its own market and started becoming a leader during the recession when they cleaned up the aisles, made them bigger, made them cleaner, brighter, and got products that people thought were pretty good price. Potentially, they were a little bit higher than Walmart, but they liked that experience and the perceived quality that they got from Target. That is good value pricing, the right combination of quality and service to the fair price. Everyday low pricing involves a constant everyday low price with no temporary price discounts. Again, that would be a Walmart. So the person who values that is people who maybe just want to buy toothpaste or paper towels. So they're going to go to Walmart to get their product because they want that value of not having to look for coupons or having to figure out if something is cheaper here than there. So their value is based off of having everyday low prices. High low pricing involves charging higher prices on everyday basis, but running frequent promotions. The best example of this is Macy's. Macy's says that a t-shirt costs $45, and then we know for a fact that every week they're going to charge 40% less. And then a couple of weeks later, they'll charge 60%, and then they'll go on sale. It's that standard high-low pricing. Customers who like that perception of quality and then getting a good deal would potentially go to Macy's. I go to Macy's once I have a coupon and it's at that 60% level. So to me, the value is getting perceived better quality of products at a great low price, but at the lower end of that cycle. We got value added pricing, which again is another customer value based pricing strategy, which is attaches value added features and services to differentiate the company's offers and their higher prices. So, for example, Apple promotes a new iPhone every year or year and a half. And the way that they can charge these outrageous prices in the United States, when in India it's so much cheaper, for example, for the same phone, is because in the United States, we actually value or perceive that Apple is innovative and we want all that innovation. Is the iPhone 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the camera is really different? Yes and no, potentially. But some people think it's so much different that they're willing to pay $2,000 for a phone just to be the first ones to get the phone. So from that standpoint, they perceive a great value by the added features and services Apple provides, including the Apple Care. And so that makes it so different from any other phone that they'll never buy anything other than an Apple product again. So that's value added pricing. So now let's take a look at cost-based pricing. So this means that the cost of that particular product sets the price. Usually you'll have a cost plus a fair rate of return that you want to make. So you know that the spam masubi costs $1, and you know how much you need to make for profit, so you'll add that to it. So again, the floor or the minimum price point would be the production costs. So taking a look at the Kamuchi spam masubi again, the cost to make the masubi is $1. So the floor or the minimum that they would ever set the price at without losing profits would be $1. We also need to really understand the total cost of a product. So that dollar cost consists of variable and fixed costs. So the variable cost vary directly at the level of production. So it's the value price of rice, the price of spam, and in this particular case, the raw materials to make the masubi is 50 cents for the packaging, the saran wrap, the rice, the seaweed wrap, etc. Then we got our fixed costs, which is we obviously need to have a location to create the product. We need to hire people. We need to have utilities like heat to cook. There's interest charges for loans we take out or executive salaries. So there's another 50 cents for fixed costs. So we have to add that to the total cost, which then becomes 50 cents for the materials and packaging plus 50 cents for fixed cost. So again, variable costs will go up and down because spam could cost more at any point in time, or rice can cost more at any point in time. But rent and heat are usually consistent, so they're called fixed. And those two things together, variable plus fixed, create the total cost. And in this case, it's $1. So let's take a look at how the cost per unit and then producing it impacts overall production and cost perspectives. So let's suppose that we now have purchased a facility. We're doing so great, and we got to make about 1,000 spam musubi per day. So we built this facility that creates 1,000 musubis efficiently. So from that standpoint, we don't think we'll ever get bigger than 1,000 musubis. So that's why we purchased that. And every time that we create a plant, in the short term, there's an average cost curve, meaning that in the beginning, when we start with our, the first masubi all the way maybe to like even 500, the cost actually is very high at the first masubi. And as we go down and get closer to full capacity, our fixed costs go down because you have to spread the fixed cost over everything that you have. So from that standpoint, overall costs will go down as you make more masubis. So once we get closer to 1,000, however, our actual facility isn't efficient anymore. There's limited space, there's limited machines, there's people, there's too many people there. So from that standpoint, if we have a facility that really works well under 1,000 masubis, but we want to make 1,500, well, what happens is that because it's not as efficient as it was before, and workers are having to wait for machines, or machines break down, or workers get in each other's way, then the actual efficiency makes it that overall costs go up. So that is the short-term run average cost curve. It's high, then it goes down to where you're at peak capacity, and then once you move past the peak capacity, then it goes back up. So now let's take a look at, well, we did so great that we're going to go and make a facility that can create up to 3,000 masubis. And so from that perspective, the first year that we're in that facility, we actually go up to 2,000 spam masubis. So between 1,000 and 2,000, there's another curve. So it goes down, it goes up again and goes down again. We can continue to do that until we hit full capacity, which is 3,000 spam Masubis. That is where we are at the most efficient, and that's the lowest point of the long-term um, curve. So from that perspective, if we go past the 3,000, then and head up to 4,000, for example, again we become less sufficient. So our long run average cost, or the LRACA, actually goes up. So again, the whole thing about pricing and cost is that you have a facility or a way to produce your products at the most efficient level, but understanding that while you're getting to that most efficient level, your costs will go down. But if for whatever reason you have to produce more than you are efficient at, then your costs will go up. So your pricing will have to go up, or you'll start losing money. So one of the beautiful things that any marketing person or business person wants to see is the how costs go down as you gain experience. So suppose again that we produce that 3,000 Masubis per day. So we gain experience producing Masubi after Masubi, day after day, and our employees become tenured. So as we get better, the average cost of production is accumulated in such a way that there's a learning curve, and therefore there's a drop in average cost. When we see this drop in average cost, where the cost per unit drops as production increases, again, that slope that we saw in every curve going down, this is highly significant. This is a time to be producing all the way up to the maximum capacity. So this downward slope experience suggests a couple of pricing strategies. One is that if you keep your prices low, that you sell more. When you sell more, you get more experience. When you get more experience, the lower your prices get. So this is a very interesting curve until you hit efficient capacity, and then it goes back up again. And not because you've lost experience, but because all of a sudden the plant is too small, or there's not enough space for all the employees, or they or you have to buy so much more product that the cost goes up. So from that standpoint, the sweet spot is on the way down those curves. So cost plus pricing is when you actually create a product, say this is our cost, and then we're going to put a standard markup. So the benefits of doing this is that, number one, it's pretty easy to do. You got to be really certain that you know what your costs are when you're pricing it this way. You probably want to make sure that you don't have a lot of competition. And what another really great benefit is that usually the customer will know potentially what that product cost, and your standard markup is pretty fair to them, and they feel pretty good about it. You're not trying to make $1 million off of one Masubi, for example. The disadvantage here is that you're ignoring demand. Maybe people are willing to pay more for it, or the competitors' prices, um, they're higher, and so you're losing money. So from that standpoint, just adding a markup to something is not always the best way to do it. So let's take a look at how this would look with our Kimochi Spam. Remember that our total cost, variable and fixed cost, was $1. Therefore, our floor, or the minimal price point that we would ever go down towards, would be $1, so that we don't lose money. However, we want to mark up by 10%. So what's 10%? 10% is $1 times 10%, which is 10 cents. So we would then price the product at $1.10. So that would be how you would calculate cost plus pricing, adding a standard markup to the base price of that product. There's another price point, which is also called break even or target return pricing, which means that you're going to set the price where your total revenue and your total cost will intersect, and you're not losing money or you're making the exact return that you want. So again, with Kamuchi spam details, our costs are $1, our price is $1. So therefore our break even is when the cost and the price are about the same, and therefore there is no profit. So that would be the break even target. Competitive based pricing is very interesting, which is we created the product and now we're going to go look at the competitors and then see what they're doing and then set our price there. So it's not about the customer and what they perceive about our product. We're just basing it off of what 7-Eleven is charging. And back in 2015, they charged $1.75. So again, what we could be doing is we know their costs are $1 and we set our price at $2.35. And that being said, it's above the 7-Eleven, and it's because our costs are a little bit higher. So we also know that 7-Eleven's prices are a lot less. However, their products don't have kimchi. So from that standpoint, we know that they don't have that product available. So we're going to charge a little bit of a premium. So let's take a look at objective number 3, which is, all right, we talked about value-based pricing and cost-based pricing. We know that cost really impact price. Our competitors impact price. The way that we produce something and how efficient we are impacts price. But what other things impact pricing and do marketers have to really watch out for? There's 7 things. One is target costing, which is making sure that you understand your overall strategy, your objectives, and the mix of products that you have so that you can put prices together in such a way that you will ensure that your target cost and price meet. So you're going to make sure that it's that selling price at that sweet spot and meets all of your objectives. So it could be that it's higher or lower than the customer potentially wants, but it's going to meet your specific objectives for your company. So who sets the prices? And how does that impact the marketer? Well, who usually sets the prices are the executives. And if it's a bigger corporation, the people who influence pricing is usually marketing. And more than likely, if it's a really large organization, pricing is its own little unique little group, and they usually report to marketing. So it's really important for marketers to understand who is going to set the price and how they can influence it in the overall corporate structure. Marketers also need to understand the overall market and demand. Some markets have more demand than others. So demand for Musubi and Waikiki is high, but the price points have a sensitivity to it because if you price it too high, people are going to go, oh, I'll just go to 7-Eleven. Or they'll choose another option because there's a lot of options out there. So really understanding your market specifically to where you're going to put your product is really super key. You also need to understand what type of market you're in. There's 4 different types of markets, mainly, and it's really identified by the number of firms in any given market and the number of products and types of products. So when there's one firm in particular, like cable TV or even tap water, which is provided by the government, that's considered a monopoly. If there's a few number of firms, but it's still not many, and it's not necessarily one, then it's an oligopoly. And examples of that would be like oil or tennis balls even. If there's many firms, it could be a monopolistic competition or a perfect competition type of firm. But what really sets each of these apart is if the product is identical or it's differentiated in a way. So, for example, books are in the monopolistic competition structure, and so are movies. Every movie and every novel is usually different. So there's really clear differentiation. If they're identical products like milk, milk is milk. I mean, it usually tastes the same unless you got chocolate milk, of course. But from that standpoint, wheat and milk are identical products. So they're considered perfect competition. So where are we from a spam masubi perspective? And again, really make sure you understand this particular slide. And we're in the monopolistic competition where we have similar products, but they're not exactly the same. And we vary on the types of quality and of types of ingredients that we have in our masubi. So the fifth thing you really need to make sure that you understand is the demand curve. So you understand the market, you understand what type of market structure you're in. So what's your demand? Well, the demand here, as we said, is pretty high. And we also know that from an overall demand curve standpoint, if you have high prices, there's lower demand. If you have low prices, there's higher demand. So you can play with your prices if you want to get rid of product, or potentially, something happened to spam masubi and there is no spam on the island. So you have the last box of spam. You could charge $100 a masubi then, potentially. So knowing when to put the price high and low depending on demand, based off of what's out there in the market, is super key. And then there's price elasticity um, in making these pricing decisions. When something is elastic, it means that if you price your product high or low, that it really goes up and down based off of if you're going to make it high or low. So Coke, for example, when I buy one can of Coke and it goes up by 10%, demand will fall by 10%. So it's almost exactly the same. And why is that? Because there's many substitutes for Coke. So again, with spam masubi, unless you're super, super special and there's nobody in the world that makes it, then you price it way too high, you're going to have a lot of masubi on your hands because there's so many substitutes. On the other hand, milk, people drink milk. It's needed for our overall health. So even when a carton of milk goes up by 10%, demand hardly changes. There's really no likely substitute for that product. On the other hand, what's very elastic is spa treatments. If spa treatments rise up by 10%, then demand drops by 20%. And that's because a spa treatment is non-essential item. So from a spam masubi perspective, as we said previously, it's pretty elastic. So if you don't price it right, or you price it too high, you're going to be stuck with a lot of product. Or if you price it too low, you're going to be out of product. So neither one is good because of the number of substitutes out there. And as well as if your price is low, you can be a substitute for 7-Eleven. So everybody's going to come to your store and get it instead of the 7-Eleven store. So the last thing that you need to take into consideration when deciding on pricing is the overall economic conditions. For example, here you'd have, if you're selling your masubis here, how is the tourism going? What's the economic conditions here in Hawaii? What are resellers' responses to pricing? What are government responses to pricing? And any social concerns that you might have. Luckily, there's not a lot of social concerns other than potentially the nutritional benefits of spam. But again, most people here this is a staple of the diets. And so the social concerns aren't that big of a deal yet, but they can be in the future. So those are things that you have to take into consideration as well. So that's the end of chapter 10. And I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next chapter.